for years, operated like I'm creative, but I don't know what my medium is. And I realized my primary medium is activities. So some people paint, some people write. I create experiences, I create activities, and I just get jazzed about making new ones.
Welcome to the Creative Chats podcast with Mike Brennan. Hey friends, welcome to another episode of Creative Chats. I am your host, Mike Brennan, and this is the podcast where we talk about creativity, the creative process, and story. And I love to unpack these things mostly with my guests and explore how we can apply these things to our own creative processes and journeys. Now, I would love to also invite you to subscribe to the Daily Creative Habit email newsletter. Nobody needs more emails, I get that. But this email that I send out once a week is packed with some inspiration, some resources. I give daily creative prompts for you if you're looking for something to get you out of the rut, to kind of get the juices flowing. Perfect for you. Also, we have a community over on Facebook that is called Daily Creative Habit as well. And I would love for you just to be taking a step to be a part of that community. Come around people who are like-minded, raising their hands to say, I want to show up more consistently for my creativity and craft. So if that's you, head on over to dailycreativehabit.com and you'll find all those resources there. Hey, I'd also love to invite you to check out my book, Make Fun a Habit. It's the creative playbook for making life and work fun again. If you have felt like fun has up and left the building somewhere along the way, I think we all do at some point, you find yourself centering around some practicality and responsibility and all the adulting words. If you need a little bit more fun in your life, in your work, in your experience, then I want to invite you to grab a copy of my book. It's 30 short chapters that give you some inspiration, some practical application, and exercises so that you can start to experience some more fun in and around your life. Go to makefunahabit.com and grab your copy today. Hey friends, today I get to talk to a friend of mine, Mark Suroviec, and Mark facilitates some fun in the workplace. He creates these events and these environments for people to come together. And it's much more than maybe what you're envisioning with like trust falls and what he says is like the cheesy stuff that everyone avoids. He does things that people actually engage with, and it affects company culture and the way people show up for work. And so we have that in alignment, championing fun. And it's just a great conversation to have with him where we talk about his process and just what some of these events look like and all the things around that, having absolute fun. So without further ado, here is my creative chat with Mark Suroviec. Well, Mark, welcome to the Creative Chats podcast. Thanks for being here today.
Oh, I'm happy to be here.
So I love that we have something in common of fun, and we're going to get into talking a little bit more about that later and some experiences. Looking forward to diving into your story. And so before we get too far into things, though, I always love to turn things back over to my guest and say, you're at a party or a gathering and people are there and they're wondering like what you do for a living or how you talk about yourself. What is it that you say to them?
I say I make work fun. My primary thing is I make work fun and leaders effective. So for years, I had a hard time just explaining what I do because I would say, hey, I do, interactive team building events or I do leadership training. And they would either stare at me with glass eyes or they would look and like immediately go, oh, trust falls. And I'm like, no, I don't do that. Like any of the cheesy stuff, like immediately whenever folks hear like team building or team development, they immediately like assume the cheese, and I'm cheese free. So
okay. Lactose intolerant.
Yes.
That's interesting. So, I think probably because everyone's had those experiences where they've been in meetings and organizations where someone does come in and they are full on cheese.
Hmm.
The trust falls that have gone wrong and resulted in injury, perhaps,
Hmm.
unfortunately. But, you know, why do you think that people are so just have maybe a bias against those type of activities?
So I think, it, about a third of people have had a negative experience with some
Mhm.
sort of team or work mandated thing. Either that was the goals of the event weren't clear. Maybe it wasn't a the people running it weren't a good fit for the audience. Maybe they were forced to do something that they weren't comfortable with, and they weren't given permission to opt out or opt into a different way of participating. So there's that fear there. They might have had a bad experience. A lot of folks just think it's a waste of time,
Mm.
and if it's not done with intention, it is a waste of time. So that's one of the things I do look through with my clients: are what are your goals? What are you trying to accomplish? And is the thing we're planning going to actually do that?
Mm. Yeah, yeah. I love that you highlight that intention piece because sometimes I think people can feel like, well, we're just doing this because somebody told me to do this, or because we need to fill time, or someone owed somebody a favor, or who knows what the reasoning might be behind some things. But I think when you get down to it and say, here's the reason why we're doing some of these things, and here's the results of us doing these things, and people make more of those connections, I think they see more value
Yeah.
in engaging a process like that. Would you say that's true?
Yes, and one thing I've observed over the years is that often the person who's planning it or the leader has had a positive experience with some of these things, and maybe their most meaningful day of their life was when they went off the zip line or jumped off the pamper pole on a ropes course and had this meaningful, tangible experience. And they assume that if I just put everyone else in that environment, they'll have the same experience. And in reality, it doesn't work that way. Uh, so a lot of my early work before an event is just even informing the group leader, hey, what you're planning might not just because it worked for you doesn't mean it's going to work for someone else. So let's find things that work for introverts and extroverts, because there is a huge bias in kind of team events and leadership training towards folks that are very outgoing.
Yeah, you make a really great point in that it's not like this one size fits all. And simply because someone had a great experience with something doesn't mean that's automatically transferable
Mm-hmm.
to an entire group of people, especially that are diverse, right?
Yeah.
Um, hmm, that's interesting. I'm wondering, like, why is this important to you? Like, were there moments of your life that highlighted and underscored the importance of this type of, event and training, and like, where did that come from?
Uh, One, it's fun.
Sure, yeah.
I'm very play oriented. But really, I went to grad school for sports psychology and counseling, and in that did an internship that involved some experiential learning components, and just realized how much of putting folks in that environment done well can turn their work into a laboratory that's safe, where we can say, hey, let's experiment, let's practice, let's address some topics that might not come out in regular conversation until we experience them. And then they say, hey, that thing we just did that's a obstacle in our work happened in this activity. It's now a safe opportunity um, to address that. So I would say that internship had a big influence. And something I've observed as a professional is just, kind of my heartbeat is that life is too short for work to suck. And that's my driving mantra every day I get out of bed. That has to be true for me. I want to make that true for other people. And and I've realized two of the key things that make work suck are either an unhealthy work culture or a leadership that doesn't have the competencies in the areas of their responsibility. So really, like, that's what gets me out of bed every morning, is to say, hey, how can we make this a place that folks actually want to be, and how can we take leaders and show them, hey, here's the skills that you should have learned when somebody promoted you, and it's fine you didn't learn them now, but let's learn them and move forward.
Yeah. So how do the conversations go where obviously you don't want to be kind of a one and done where you come in, you create this environment and this experience for people where it feels like an intermission, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
um, and is disconnected from their work culture and them showing up and having their normal processes, right? So how do you bridge the gap of, okay, here's this event that we're having, here's this experience we're having, but it's bigger than this, to
Yeah.
to get them to adopt it actually into a culture.
Mm. When I solve that problem 100%, I'll let you know. So,
Okay, fair enough. Fair
no,
enough.
yeah, I think so. Couple things. So I think of oftentimes for me that fun event is the foot in the door to say, hey, this is something worthwhile. Let's experience that. And I'm pretty clear, if all we do is this one play thing once a year, then it's only going to move the needle so far. And if it's a toxic environment, it's actually going to make it worse.
Mm,
Because in a toxic work environment, doing just the fun thing means you're avoiding the real problem. And folks actually reject that, and so they're like, we did the fun thing, it didn't work. Yes, because we didn't address some of the core issues that are at play. So one of the things that I'm working through the details of now is something I call my work play leader lab, which allows an organization to send a group of leaders through periodic training across the year, so that it's not just this one thing. Hey, let's dig in, let's do some disc profiles, let's use that as a reoccurring training theme, let's go through this checklist of skills to make sure that folks have that. And the pilot group that I'm working with that has really got a lot out of that.
mm. Can you walk us through, like, you show up to an organization that you're hosting this event, people come, what happens? Like, what are they actually doing?
Uh, so I pride myself on the non-cheese and trying to do things that are unique. So one of my most popular events is a design your own mini golf course. So I literally put just a pile of lumber and astroturf and PVC pipe and all these objects that and put teams in small groups, and they build a fully functional mini golf course. They have to then do a sales pitch for their theme, and so they got to create like whole names and themes and par, and then we have an actual competition, like a putting competition, to play the course and give out awards for the best design course. I've got a catapult building one that's similar, where I give them all this pipe and different things, and there's literally no design whatsoever. It's just, here's the stuff, make a catapult happen. And I've seen at this point about 20 different designs of catapults that actually worked. And then I put them through a series of testing things. I really love amazing race style scavenger hunts. So I love showing up at a place and putting little caches of activities for them to discover and do. And then a newer one is called Stumped. It's like a escape room in a box, but without locks. So that that one folks really get into. So
Mm. That certainly does sound a lot of fun, like all those various activities.
mhm.
At what point do people realize that it's not just all about the actual fun activity, but that there's learning about maybe collaboration, teamwork, those kind of skills underneath it. And like, how do you address that? Do you just full on say, hey, we just experienced this, now here's the correlation, or how does that work?
It all depends on what the client's goals are. So some of my clients, they literally just want to play, and I'm 100% okay with that. Like, hey, we've had a good year, we want to celebrate, we're just adding another touch point of positive investment back into a team that's healthy. Great, well, let's just play, and we don't talk about it at all. There's no, like, I don't force any learnings. Like, we're not sitting around, in group therapy or anything like that. So, but other groups, it's more of a discovery thing where it's like, hey, we just did this thing, what did you see? Where did you see similarities with your outcomes? And as we start talking about it, you see these little light bulbs go off. I was just working with a manufacturing facility with some engineers, and literally they're like, this is what happens. This is like, you could see them just like this happens every, and if we and like I loved it because I was like, yes.
Yeah.
So some people never make that connection, but when it clicks, it's so powerful.
Yeah. It kind of reminds me of almost like how, Disney movies, you're hiding the vegetables and the mashed potatoes or whatever, whatever that saying is, right? Where you're giving them entertainment, but there's also learning involved in the entertainment. And I think even when you allow for self-discovery in the process, that's when people own things at a deeper level, because you're not just simply spoon feeding them and going like, here it is, here's the correlation 1-to-1, but allowing someone to have those revelations and discoveries, I think is those could be powerful moments, So
Agree.
what kind of conversations do you have to get into with people in terms of like the leaders who are hiring you? Perhaps, some may have a bias towards going like, yes, I love fun, and yes, I value the culture and building a culture that people enjoy. But for maybe those who need a little more convincing, they may be like, fun really in the workplace? Like, how do those conversations go? Like, and what is it that you have to say in order to bring some education around that so that you help them understand the value?
Uh, this I struggled with when I started my business because I saw a big gap in kind of management competencies. Excuse me. And just some of the practical skills of leading people. So leaders might have been inspirational, but they might not know how to delegate, or they might not know how to project manage, or they might not know how to do a performance review. And I found that no one wanted to admit to not having those competencies. And so when I tried to approach it that way, like, hey, level up your professional skills, it fell flat. I realized that folks are more willing to say, I would like to be a better leader. So I usually have those conversations under the banner of leadership or leadership development, because most people are willing to admit, hey, I'm either not a great leader or I would like to be a better leader, and that's more of a safe conversation for folks to have. So a lot of those conversations look like, hey, we want to improve our leadership, or another thing that makes it very easy is, I use the disc as a tool, and the disc is so powerful that sometimes it just sells itself. So, like, hey, we want to do a disc training. Well, when Workplace Solutions does a disc training, it is much more hands-on and interactive. You're not sitting watching me do a PowerPoint. Like, we're getting into the meat, and it's interactive, and folks come out of it going, oh, I actually know this content and feel like I could use this tool now. So I've found that that's super helpful. So I think either the leadership training or the disc specifically has helped me have those more serious conversations, because it's work play. So I am just as passionate about professional development and competency and all of those things as I am about the fun. So they're blended together.
Nice. Yeah. And if anyone's listening and they're not familiar with DISC, can you just give like a quick little overview of like what are you talking about when you say DISC?
Yeah, so DISC is a profile. It's a assessment of behaviors. So it's some people view it as a personality assessment. It's is it really, sort of, but it basically takes all of human behavior and categorizes it into four categories. Dominance, influence, steadiness or supportiveness, and conscientiousness. And it assigns you a value or a set of behaviors based on, it doesn't assign you, it describes how you behave when you're not thinking about it. So a lot of folks get scared about those kind of, or get anxious about, oh, this is going to pigeonhole me. But in reality, all it's doing is describing how you're most likely to act when you're not actively thinking about it. But you can act however you want. So
Yeah. Yeah. And there are other tools out there as well.
yes,
I know strength finders
strength
and
finder.
like things like the Enneagram, which is probably more of a personal approach
Yeah.
on some things. But yeah, for sure. I think the goal in at least knowing yourself better so that you know how you operate, you know what your motivations are, and you know how to work well with others, really.
Yes. Yeah.
Because when you're working and you don't get to choose who your teammates are a lot of times, you have to figure out how to play nice and how
Yeah.
to bring skills out of each other and do so in that environment that everybody wins, which can be a
Yeah.
challenge a lot of times.
Yeah.
So when you have these events, and I'm sure that you have multiple things that you can draw from as far as curating these events, the types of activities, some of the things you've talked about, catapult or mini golf and disc assessment and other things. How do you personally figure out what are the right tools to bring to the table for a specific event?
Um, this might come across as selfish, but one of the questions I ask is, what am I most excited about? Because if I'm not excited about it, they're not going to be excited about it. But I've, I've a lot of my background. I ran a challenge course. I led a bunch of experiential learning things. So I have a very large mental database of hundreds of activities, and through working with about 20,000 different people in small groups, I can say, all right, this activity fits this topic that they're actually working for, or this activity fits this maybe it's the environment, maybe we're stuck in a conference room, or this activity fits this this is an older group and it needs to be less physically active, so there's a lot of things in there. I actually have something called that I call the activity 8R, which is go through these 8Rs to select and reflect and facilitate an activity. So I do an entire training on, hey, this is how you choose the right activity. Hey, this is how you communicate it so that it's clear, and this is how you reflect on it afterwards. So, but I do put a ton of effort and thought, because everything I want it to be intentional. I want
Sure.
it to meet the goals of the group, and I'm flexible. Like whatever the goals are, great. Let's figure out how to do that.
Yeah. I think that's where it's important that people understand this strategy. It's not just simply a free for all and like, yeah,
Yeah.
we're going to have fun and yeah, we're going to do some activities and stuff and I think that would probably help lend it to people seeing the value
Mm.
and connectedness in what they do and how they do it. And so that it seems less of a interruption or
Yeah.
intermission for
Yeah.
themselves. But when you're in these environments, and I'm sure that there are people, because whenever there's something that's kind of a mandatory, you have to go because the company's making you do this type of
Mm.
thing. There may be personalities who are like really like, the hard eye roll and the arms
Mm.
crossed and the like, I don't want to do this, right?
Mm.
And so when you encounter those people in the midst of these, experiences, How do you address them, and what do you say to them when their starting point is one of closure?
Yeah. Yeah, one of the principles is that I honor and value choice. So if this is a bad idea for you, or you're not in a headspace to do this, I'm not going to force you to do anything, and I'm not going to let your boss force you to do it either. So I give them permission to kind of choose their own adventure as they go. The other thing, honestly, like I tell them, you know, a fact which usually surprises people. My wife hates this stuff. So so I go, hey, some of you are dreading what we're about to do. My wife is in that camp. She hates, like, if you like, I cringe whenever I hear the word icebreakers, but you know, if we're doing like some sort of warm up, like she just cringes. So I actually run a lot of my schedules and activities and plans through her and say, would you hate this? And eliminate some of the things that folks that aren't excited wouldn't like. So I let people know flat out, just like, hey, that's real. That's really, maybe you had a bad experience. Maybe this isn't your thing, and I'm okay with that. That's fine. So which is disarming to be like, yeah, hey, we this isn't the gung-ho person that says everything is fine when it's not. Like, let's be real. Like, some people hate this stuff. So that I've found that helps, and letting them know that my wife is in that camp seems to help as well.
Mm. Have there been experiences where someone who's maybe been resistant in the beginning and then they've kind of come around to things because they've been willing to at least try it a little bit? Like, any examples that you can think off the top of your head that might have happened?
I'm trying to think. So what happens sometimes is the reason why folks are there isn't always clear. Um, and just somewhere in the communication chain, it breaks down from whoever I'm communicating with to, you know, everyone that's coming on the team. So sometimes at the beginning I'll have them, you know, pair up or get in small groups, and just discuss, hey, what does success look like for you today, and, you know, be as honest as possible. And I get some pretty, you know, clear answers sometimes, like, I don't know why I'm here. Great, let's discover that together. What would be a win for you today? All right, let's figure that out. And like, okay. So it, off the top of my head, I'm sure there's hundreds, but I'm blanking.
Sure. Yeah. 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 I think of like what came to mind was like Stanley from The Office, right?
Mm,
It's like, I don't want to do that. Don't make me do
yeah.
that unless there's like a donut involved. Then I'll go and do your thing.
I did think of one. So that when we did the pilot launch of the mini golf design challenge, there was a woman, and she was very quiet and she didn't talk. And then halfway through the activity, I look over at her and she's giggling. And I was like, "Are you okay?" She's like, "This is the most fun I've ever had at work." And I was like, "Oh, oh," but that just spoke to me right there. So,
Yeah. 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 You know, and I think too many people think work automatically has to be like hard and unenjoyable and, you know, just always pushing, because that's been their experience, right? And there are even people who say, well, work is work. It's not supposed to be
yeah.
fun, right? But I think when you get down to it and you say, well, who wouldn't want to enjoy what they're spending most of their life doing? I mean, we spend so many hours at work. Don't you
Hmm.
want to enjoy that? Don't you want to have a pleasurable experience? Don't you want to know that you're contributing to something larger, that you have a place for your ideas and for your skills that to make a
Hmm.
difference? Like, I think, you know, when you put it in those terms, people perhaps are more open to the idea of fun in the workplace. At least that's been my
Hmm.
discoveries so far, and I continue to champion that as well. You know,
Yeah.
we're kindred in that. You know, advocates for fun.
Hmm.
And can you think of in terms of maybe some of the things that you've done, like what are the more creative things you've talked about, like making the golf course, mini golf, and talked about escape room and catapult, but like in terms of the role of creativity in the midst of
Mhm.
this fun, can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I'll approach that from two sides. So for one, like creativity for me is essential. So for years operated like I'm creative, but I don't know what my medium is, and I realized my primary medium is activities, and so some people paint, some people write. I create experiences, I create activities, and I just get jazzed about making new ones. So some specific creativity focused things in some of my events. I have a short workshop called "How to Generate Mountains of Ideas," and we go through different tactics and methods to generate ideas, and we do that very practically and hands-on. One of the I was inspired by a colleague who wrote the gentleman Daniel Cape, who does the 300 ways to use a Nalgene bottle. I did a short session called 101 non-sexual ways to use a mannequin, and so because I had to put that little caveat in there. But and literally, like, we went through these different techniques, like, impossible hybrids and ekphraxis and these other things where we took an actual mannequin and played with it and tried to generate ideas. And some of those ideas were actually very actionable. So that's a fun one. But I love a lot of my activities are inspired by kind of STEAM learning or STEM or STEAM learning. And so this idea of building and creating and designing is core to a lot of the challenges. So like another favorite is I designed a Rube Goldberg machine suitcase. So literally, you would open the suitcase and you had everything you needed to make a fully functional Rube Goldberg machine in an hour, and just discover what it looks like. And you just see people's creativity thrive when they're presented with a a very concrete challenge. Do this in this amount of time. Here's some resources. Now experiment together.
Yeah, yeah. And the beautiful thing about creativity is you never get to the bottom of it. There's always more expressions. There's always people looking at things from different angles, coming at with different skill sets, and you can have the same exercise with a different group of people and have a completely different outcome. Which
Mm-hmm.
that's exciting when you get to those opportunities to realize, man, there's something bigger at work here.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to creativity for you personally, besides creating the events for people and all the particulars of the exercises and that you're leading them through, like just you as a person, like what are some of the creative avenues that you explore?
So improv was my pandemic hobby. So I took an improv class 8 weeks before the pandemic started. And our first show was supposed to be on the day that the world shut down. So it
Oh,
it didn't happen. But we ended up transitioning to Zoom. And so for the last, it's been 3 years now, I've done a Tuesday night improv things on Zoom with people across the world. And that just improv and Zoom is just a whole nother bag that's interesting in its own right. So I'd say improv fuels my creativity, creative writing. So I love humor and satire writing. I originally started writing to promote the business, and I found that just doing shenanigans was way more fun than talking about my actual business. And so I enjoy that. So those are two outlets. And honestly, I like board games. So I have a friend that does board game design and development, and so we have a standing meeting once a month where we just pitch ideas back and forth to each other because there's a lot of overlap in the gaming industry as well. So.
Yeah, yeah. You mentioned writing and creative writing. I know you have a book coming out. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so the book is called Fun Lies: The Ambassador's Leaky Bucket of Stories That Are Completely Half True. So this is, yeah, so I refer to myself as the ambassador of fun. I did get that title from someone else. So I did an event and the participant came up and he's like, you're like the ambassador of fun. Like, where do you get all these ideas? I'm like, oh, I'm keeping that. It's a collection of 42 short stories that I wrote. And some of them are satires in the style of The Onion or the Babylon Bee. Some of them are just ridiculous nonsense lists, like 29 reasons you shouldn't listen to my podcast. Some of them are personal stories where just ridiculous things happen. Like when I was in college, there was a domestic terrorist terrorizing our bathroom called the Phantom Pooper. I'm not going to get into the details on the podcast, but it was gross. So I approached the book with, hey, here's a bunch of humor and satire and just ridiculousness. It's full of tomfoolery. And some of the things in the book are true, some aren't. You just see if you can pick out what's real and what's not. So there's a lot of fake quotes. There's a lot of, all of that. None of it to be, manipulative or, we're not talking fake news, like that kind of thing, but just more all humor stuff. So.
Nice. And where can people get this book? And it comes out in May, is that correct? Or?
Yep, May 8th, and it is available on Amazon.com. So you can get, there's a Kindle version, paperback, and hardcover. And I think at this point, that's the only place it's available. So.
Okay. All right. Well, awesome. I encourage anyone listening right now to be sure to check that out and see if they can figure out what is true and what is a lie. Sometimes what do they say? Truth is stranger than fiction, right?
Yeah.
But thank you for this time. Also, let us know where can people find you on the interwebs and follow you, stalk you, all the good things. Lay some links on us.
Well, I'll put out some more applications for stalkers. I do have very high standards. My website is workplaysolutions.com. That's WORKPLAY. Workplay. If you want to email me, it's just mark@workplaysolutions.com. And then pretty much all of our social media is Workplay Soul. That's SOL. We're on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. So
awesome. Well, I thank you for your contribution of bringing fun and laughter and personal development to the world, and how you continue to just challenge people and you show up just as yourself, having fun doing the things that you're encouraging other people to do and have fun as well. So thank you so much for our time today, Mark. I really appreciate it.
I appreciate being here. Thanks for having me, Mike.
Thanks for listening today. I'd appreciate it if you would subscribe, leave a rating and a review. It really helps this podcast be seen and heard by others.